I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. And I desperately needed a job. I fell in love with FinTech. Chatting with people who worked with the digital giants, like working with Netflix and Amazon and stuff, and trying to understand like what are the payment needs that they have. But what really frustrated me is like, what about everyone else? It got to the point where I was just so obsessed with the problem. I quit my well-paying job, which my parents were like, what are you doing? I did 96 interviews across 40 nationalities. And so I am so adamant that we will succeed because we're building specifically for these communities.
We're live. Today we have with us Nina Mohanty, who's the CEO and founder of Blue Money, which is a fintech serving immigrant communities. If you're joining us for the first time, we're the Bay HQ, and I'm Amma, your host. We're all about inspiring, connecting, and guiding the next generation of British Asians. So Nina, let's jump into your story right at the start. So when you're growing up, what did you want to be? Like, what were your dreams?
What did I want to be when I grew up? I wanted to be, well, as Asian, I think maybe you can appreciate this. There's a difference between what I wanted to be and what I was expected to be. So I was expected, and I'm half Indian, half Taiwanese, so doubly Asian. I was expected to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, whatever. Both my parents were engineers, software engineers specifically. I wanted to be a ballerina, as many young girls want to. And I actually did train in ballet for 17 years.
17? Wow.
Yes. Fun fact. It doesn't look like it now, but I did train in ballet for 17 years. I also wanted to be an astronaut at one point. Very cliche of the time. And, you know, it's apt that the Barbie movie has just come out because I was thinking back and reflecting that back when I was younger, actually my career aspirations kind of just aligned with whatever new Barbie came out. So like ballerina Barbie and astronaut Barbie. But I think at one point I also very much wanted to be a child or a pediatrician, a children's doctor. And I love children. I love being around them and playing with them, teaching them. And I thought, okay, well, if I have to be a doctor because my parents say so, then it would be nice to be a pediatrician. Unfortunately, I did not do very well in AP biology. So that was out of the question. But a whole host of things. I'm still figuring it out, to be honest.
So is there now a Barbie that's a fintech Barbie? Is that why you've now gone down this path?
You know what? I should get one made. You can do like custom Barbies now, can't you? So no, I guess there's more STEM Barbies now, which I appreciate.
What did you study in the end then?
So I went to uni to study international relations with an emphasis on war and peace studies, a further emphasis on counterterrorism.
Okay, so how did you said that wasn't part of what you wanted to be?
No,
like,
no.
From doctor to counterterrorism, what was the link there?
I think because I grew up in, I guess I call it a mixed race household. I know in the UK, mixed race usually refers to like a black community and then white of some sort, right? Or maybe brown and white. Rarely is it just, you know, two types of Asian. I do consider myself mixed race, multicultural, because even though both parts of me are Asian, I grew up with, you know, a South Asian, Indian father, and then an East Asian Taiwanese mother. And even within that, you have 2 different religions, 4 different languages, and then me growing up in the US. So there was a lot of very expectations and tensions and very interesting dynamics in our household. And I think that is where I became very interested in how people communicate with each other, in the way that people's differences can cause conflict, or how you can come towards a resolution. And so I think that's when I decided, okay, well, I speak Mandarin. Sadly, I don't speak Hindi or Odia. Sorry, everyone that's watching. I'm a terrible Desi. I speak French as well, can get by with like very basic Spanish. And I was learning Arabic when I was doing my master's. So I love languages and I love how people communicate. And if I'm traveling, I will try and pick up the local language. And so I kind of thought, oh, okay, maybe diplomacy is the way to go. And it seemed acceptable to my parents. It wasn't lawyer or doctor, but it was acceptable. So I went to study that. And I think for many people of our generation, having grown up as an American following the aftermath of 9/11, there was a huge amount of patriotism and pride in being American. And so there was a huge pull for me to serve in some way. And I think there was a study done ages ago that actually found that immigrant children have a tendency to go into civil service or do things or have higher rates of patriotism for their home country as almost a response, a psychological response for thank you for bringing my parents in or letting them be in this country. So I think a big part of wanting to serve in the US government had to do with that as well. But I ended up, studying counterterrorism. And that's how I ended up working for the US government initially.
It's interesting. I wonder if that holds with the UK as well, because maybe people listening could find out, because you often hear, well, I guess it might be a social media bubble of almost the opposite way, right? Of people talking about this happened and that happened. So it'd be interesting to see like people in the audience, what they think of that too.
I wonder if it's also specific to the time around 9/11, because in the American psyche, it holds so much space, especially if you were alive during that time. So I wonder if it is biased by that, but yeah.
And then, so you're working with the US government, and then there's a few steps in between there. What happened now from that to then going into the FinTech world, and how did you go down this kind of very different path in a way?
Yeah, so I entered civil service working for the US government. I started working at the US Embassy back when it was in Mayfair in London, before they've moved over to Battersea. And I was working in the Foreign Commercial Service under Secretary Penny Pritzker in the Obama administration. And so it was incredible, to work in an administration for such an inspirational person. But one of the things that I found very frustrating was that it was just very formulaic and very bureaucratic, dare I say.
What?
Sorry,
Government bureaucratic? No.
Can you imagine? I feel really sorry for, no offense to anyone that's working in governments, but it was moving at a pace that I was ready to outrun. And the other thing is, when you work in government, you are part of an institution. And so you very much always toe the party line, regardless of which government is or in office, right? And so that was something, I think my value system is very, very strong. And I thought longer term I would struggle to remain impartial, to put it nicely. I really felt a lot of pride, though, in being a civil servant. And I have so much respect for civil servants, whether they are teachers or carers, doctors, firefighters, whatever. So I kind of did this just completely off the cuff thing and applied for a master's program. Those who don't know what to do apparently go back to school, which is what I did. And so I applied for a master's program. I chose deliberately not to do an MBA, shock horror for all the Asians. And I did a master's in management. So not far off, a cousin of the MBA, but I did a master's in management.
Do your parents say that you did an MBA?
I think they kind of do tell everyone that because more people understand what an MBA is.
Yeah.
But what I deliberately chose the master's in management because this particular program was very focused on understanding the root causes of things. In fact, the school's motto is rerum cognoscis causas, which is to know the causes of things. And it was always about, okay, so this thing has happened in a business. It's not just about what do we do, but let's get to the root cause of why has this happened and make sure that we can think about how to stop that from happening again or changing the outcome. And that very much appealed to me. I think I have a romanticized idea of myself as an academic as well. Really love being in libraries. I love writing long papers. I enjoy all of that. And so it just was like a perfect place for me. And it was during that time. So it was a 2-year degree and you needed to do like a interim kind of internship, MBA associate type thing, right? And I desperately needed a job. And I applied to every investment bank, every consulting company in this city. I probably have a rejection letter from every single one of them, which I now wear as a badge of honor. But back then it stung. And they very much like pushed us towards consulting and like investment banking. Back then, private equity wasn't cool yet, but and tech certainly wasn't cool yet. So everyone was like clamoring to go to the big three, like fighting each other to get into like 2 spots at McKinsey for the summer, right? I was just getting rejection letter after rejection letter. And I mean, look at the way that I'm dressed. I think I also just I'm not a person who conforms very well.
Okay.
And so I now take it as a blessing in disguise. I was presented with this opportunity where someone was like, oh, MasterCard are looking for an intern. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh, God, another bank, which is hilarious now because obviously now I know MasterCard's not a bank, but I didn't know that at the time. And so I applied for the role. And I think I am someone who it's my own fault. I just don't come across very well in a CV, I guess. Like I'm terrible at covering letters. I'm terrible at actually pulling out accomplishments in a CV, but I do very well when you give me a task to do. And so I was given a task to basically pitch an app which would integrate the MasterPass API, which was a product that MasterCard was working on at the time. So I went in and pitched them on it, and they loved it. And I'm still in contact with the two people who interviewed me to this day. But that's where I started my career in fintech. And it was very formative because it was around the time, I don't know if you can cast your mind back to when Monzo was Mondo.
Oh, wow, yeah. I can remember that. Yeah.
And Starling was kind of starting from scratch. Revolut was on the MasterCard Start path, which is their incubator. Monese was starting out. It was just like a very exciting time to be in the center of it all, especially since everyone was issuing on the MasterCard rails. And so I kind of got to be in the middle of it all. I sat back to back with the prepaid team. They were called the prepaid team back then. Now they're called the FinTech and EMI team. And it's like a whole huge team now. But back then it was just prepaid cards. And I just learned so much so quickly. And I think I also am very grateful to the fact that everyone on the team where I worked at MasterCard, they were like, this woman is obviously very curious. And so they kind of gave me free rein to try a lot of things. So it was kind of, if you get the work done that you're meant to get done, feel free to have conversations with people across the business. So I was like chatting with people who worked with the digital giants, like working with Netflix and Amazon and stuff, and trying to understand like, what are the payment needs that they have? I was speaking to people that were working on public transport, and I got to work with a guy who helped start contactless on TfL, right? So I learned so much, and it was very, very rewarding in that way. But also it was that, in French we say the coup de foudre, which means like the lightning struck, and I fell in love with fintech. And here I've been ever since. So
where did the seeds for Blue Money come from then?
Very nice pun. Love that.
I was thinking about that for the last 5 minutes in my head. I was like,
you're like,
waiting to ask the question.
Gotta get the pun in.
Yeah.
Blue Money's seeds were planted probably just through my own lived experience, but also through my experience having worked at Starling Bank, launching the current account there. I worked at an open banking platform called Bud, and then Klarna. So I've been in the fintech space for a while. I felt that I was building really interesting, innovative products. And, especially like at Klarna, for example, or Bud. I mean, at Bud, we were building open banking right after it had effectively gone into legislation through the Payment Service Directive 2. And we were really like truly building the plane as we were trying to fly it for this thing that didn't exist, that no one could figure out how to commercialize or anything. At Klarna, it was like, what is buy now, pay later? How does that fit in? What's regulated credit? What's not what's unregulated credit? So it was a very exciting time to be building innovative things. But one of the things that really frustrated me was that I felt I was constantly building for the same person, which is fine. I was building oftentimes for people like us, tech workers, white collar workers with like disposable income, and that's fine. But what really frustrated me is like, what about everyone else? And again, here I am with like my social justice hat on. I've always just had such a strong sense of, well, actually, yes, what about everyone else? And growing up in an immigrant household, I'm sure it will resonate with quite a few of the listeners. I watched my dad send money home to India, to Western Union my entire life. We still send money home to India. And it is part of the immigrant life that you send money home. But one of the things that frustrated me even more about it was when it came to financial services and immigrant communities, the only product where they were very well served was remittances. And even then, it wasn't that great, right? It was like Western Union or MoneyGram. These are your two options, or like RIA transfer. Nowadays, there's so many new, companies, and London is really like the place to be for remittance companies. But what struck me was no one was actually trying to tackle the rest of it, which is, okay, after you sent your money home and you're effectively providing for two households, one on this continent and one back home, how are you building wealth where you are? How are you getting to grips with living in a completely new place and giving your family and your community where you are now the leg up that they need? And I think about my own story where my parents benefited from just basic financial literacy, right? My mother was told from her sister to open what's called a 529. It's a tax code for a tax efficient vehicle for investing, which allows you to basically pay for education, which means that my brother and I didn't pay for uni. And she knew to invest in that vehicle because her sister had told her that. Not everyone knows that that exists to this day.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people don't know that, I mean, in the States, that a 529 exists. And we were lucky that my mother was financially savvy and she was seeking out information. So while, yes, they were sending money home, they were also thinking about their wealth in the US. And it really frustrated me that the more people I spoke to, there weren't any products actually serving people where they are. And so it got to the point where I was just so obsessed with the problem. And I mean, you get it as an entrepreneur. Well, for me personally, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I never saw that path for myself, even though I'm from the Silicon Valley, even though, like, literally I was born and raised there, even though my dad is a many-time entrepreneur, I never thought I would be an entrepreneur.
Why didn't you think that?
I just didn't think it was for me. I don't know. I really couldn't tell you. Like, in hindsight, I've always just felt I was very good at executing to someone else's vision. And it's very daunting, I think, to be the one to stand up and say, here's this vision of the future that I have. This is the mission that I'm on. Come join me. And it sounds so like, oh, touchy-feely, like self-help book. But it's drastically different to follow than it is to lead. Because when you lead, it comes with so much responsibility. Like every day I'm checking that bank account and going, you know, is everyone going to get paid this month? You know, I'm thinking about our customers. I'm thinking about every little piece. Are they happy? Do they have dental care? You know, whatever it might be. And I've convinced these people, or our mission has convinced these people to come join us and build towards this vision of a future that I am trying to sell them. And so there is so much responsibility that comes with it. So I just never thought it would be me. And I actually, with Bloom, kind of shipped it around a bit before I left Klarna. I was chatting to people at various like challenger banks and fintech companies and saying, hey, there's this market gap and I really think that we should be building towards it. I went to remittance companies. I was like, can I come and work for you and build this with you? And people were just like, not interested, not for us, you know, not a priority. And so it got to the point where I was so obsessed with the problem. And I had this like blank wall like this. I had just moved back from living in the States, doing some work with Klarna. I just moved back to the UK before COVID hit. So I had a blank wall. I had just moved in. And by the time I left, it was covered in Post-its. It was like the Unabomber. And it was like, you know, red string. And like, it was intense. But it was also, my bed was facing that wall. So every morning I would wake up and see it. And it got to the point where I just was dreaming about it. And it was like, okay, this is it. We're doing it. And so I quit my well-paying job, which my parents were like, what are you doing? And set out to be this entrepreneur that I never thought I'd be.
So you said your dad was an entrepreneur as well. Did he not think when you wanted to, how was that reaction?
You know, it's so interesting because he was like, are you sure? It wasn't, I kind of was like, oh, maybe he'll be proud. You know, like, oh, his daughter's like him, has got the entrepreneurial bug. I think parents always want what's best for their children. And like we as Asian kids we can be very tongue in cheek about the fact that our parents have very high expectations or they expect us to do this or that. But ultimately, and I've done enough therapy to know and understand now that it's because they want what's best for us. They want us to live an easier life than what they had to go through. And I think so similarly, both my parents were like, are you sure? Do you have the savings? Do you have your own personal runway to get through this? Are you sure that you want to leave a corporate type job? I mean, Klarna, but still, do you want to leave a comfortable job with benefits, with private healthcare, with a very generous pension matching to do this? Because they want you to live an easy life. Every parent wants their child to live an easy life. And so I think that's why they tried to convince me not to. I don't think it had anything to do with them not believing in me or in the business, but more just, especially with my dad, he knew what I was about to take on. He knew. And in hindsight now, I have memories of like the times when my parents would fight. And it was always because, you know, my dad's going, okay, you know, the business is, we're getting close to, you know, we have this much runway and maybe we need to take out a loan or whatever. And all of these things which seemed very distant and scary or not my business back then, I'm like, oh, wow. Well, that hits different now when it's like, oh, how am I going to make payroll or whatever, right? So it was not out of a place of malice. It was a place out of just, are you sure you don't want to choose the easy option?
Yeah. And like once you actually like quit your job, right? And like you had this massive wall of ideas, but did you have a pathway set of like, these are the first steps I'm going to take? Or was it more the grand vision? Did you have like both sides ready? Or was it like you said before, where you were building the plane as yours started to fly?
I think I'm, well, I can't say I'm risk averse because I've started my own business, a venture-backed business, but I am more risk averse than your average founder in that I made sure that I had my own personal runway, that I could cover my own rent, that I could cover bills. I even side gigged for a while until like kind of doing bits and pieces of consulting work on the side, even after I left Klarna. And, you know, I'm very privileged in that the work that I do allowed me to do that. I also had already begun validating Bloom. So by the time I had left Klarna, maybe a few months after, I officially hit, so I did 96 interviews across 40 nationalities, one-on-one interviews with people from immigrant backgrounds in this country. And I mean, I was talking to the bus drivers on a cigarette break. I was talking to cleaners in the offices. I was talking to people like aunties in Facebook groups, right? So I had enough conviction there in terms of validation. I then went into building a no-code version of Bloom to try to see like, okay, if I build this in a digital way, in a web app, this is like bare bones, bootstrapped everything. Is there going to be a response? And I think one of the things that has always helped me is my father works in product now. He's a very like, you know, senior product professional. I am very product obsessed. And I think when you're product obsessed, you're ultimately obsessed with the customer. And so it's been ingrained in me from day one that it doesn't matter. And I'm also American. The customer is always right. And I've worked a number of service jobs, bartender, server, you know, barista. So the customer is always right. And so I spoke to enough customers that I just had this conviction and was getting the right signals. Then I started putting together a deck. And I am also very privileged in that I naturally had a network of people who were founders or were investors or knew people in that space, because not everyone has that. And like, I can't even imagine if I went back and just was going in blind, just like I'm a random person who is really obsessed with this problem. If I didn't have my background in FinTech, if I didn't know FinTech investors already, I really don't know how I would have done it. So I am very grateful that I had that in place already. I guess there was a certain amount of like, how prepared can I be before taking the plunge and making sure I was like padding out. So I'm like, let's put the trampoline down and everything else and the net so I can bounce back if it all goes wrong. But then at some point you just have to jump, don't you?
And what have you enjoyed most about that jump now that you work for yourself and you have that vision? What do you enjoy most about being a founder? You said like obviously you've got the stresses, right? You've got the stress of payroll, that kind of stuff. Obviously, hopefully there's some good stuff too, right?
Yes, no, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I often, you know, like many founders, you have that feeling of what happens if I fail. I think even more.
What about if you fly?
What if you fly? Yes, let's be very cheesy. And I think I'm just so grateful that every day I get to wake up and do something interesting, something that fills my soul. And there are days where I'm staring at an Excel spreadsheet and I'm just like, oh my God, we can make it end, please. But there are also days, like just this week, I took a bunch of posters. I live in Lewisham and I went up the main road and just popped my head into various shops and said, hey, can I put a poster up? And just start talking with a proprietor. And then we have a great conversation. And they go, oh yeah, I love this. Like, tell me more about the app. And just like speaking to people and being with people. And it's something that, you know, I posted about on LinkedIn and I joked that sometimes the things that don't scale are the most energizing. Yeah. And it's something that as we grow, I do realize right now that as we scale, there will be a point where I won't have the time to walk around with posters putting up, like by myself on a Monday evening, putting posters up. But I'm so grateful that right now that's my job. I'm also really grateful as well that I get to be an expert in this particular space. Like I would never I would never dream of telling you how to run your business or like content or no, I don't know anything about content, right? Or what makes good content. But when it comes to immigration, when it comes to the intersection of financial services and immigration, like I'm so obsessed with this. And I've read every book, I've watched every movie, every documentary, everything. I know this problem in and out. And so it's also, I feel very lucky that I get to be the one to educate others, to break down misconceptions, to point at this massive multi-billion if not trillion opportunity and say, look at this thing that we've been overlooking for so long, and bring people along for the ride. So it's very, very rewarding as well. I think the other thing is I really enjoy the fluffy bits of business that like a lot of people, like we've seen the headlines where it's like, oh, is the culture at X and Y company going to bring them down? Especially as you near, IPO or some sort of exit event, you always see that that's when not thinking about culture or not thinking about incentives and all of that comes to bite you in the ass. And these are things that I love. And it's so rewarding for me to hire someone like our ops manager, Asha, is brilliant. She was a paralegal. She was studying to be a lawyer. And, I remember the first time on her first day, she's like, I don't really know why I'm here. And to see her she started beginning of this year. So in 8 months, she has just completely blossomed into this like kick-ass ops manager, like just constantly on it, so organized. Like she just keeps everything afloat. And to see her grow into that has been amazing. And just like, I love being able to say to someone, let's come to you with a new challenge. And I'm entrusting you with this because it's not always something that I had in my career. And so that's very rewarding as well.
So it's really nice to hear like that progress you got so far. Mm-hmm. Like for the audience, could you tell us like what are some of your biggest wins so far? Like what some of the highlights along the journey?
Yeah, I think the things that I'm most proud of is we have become regulated, which is not an easy I think I forgot to celebrate it. And not only have we become regulated, we've done it twice with 2 different partners. But we did that, and we've actually I'm such a like teacher's pet. We were told by one of our partners that like you were such a delight to work with, and I was like, oh, yes, we were. But it was amazing, especially in light of consumer duty coming in for anyone in the financial regulation space. That has been very important, and for us to be keeping up on pace with that and just remaining above board from day one is great. And we've also launched in both app stores, which is mad if you think about the fact that up until recently, we were a team of 4. We have 2 engineers, like front end, back end, working on it. And the fact that we've built that and shipped it and have people actively moving money on it is super, super exciting. And I think just for me, like, it's just that light every day when I tell an Uber driver or I tell a woman in a nail salon about this app and they recognize it immediately. And usually if I know their cultural background, I can tell them what it's called in their language and they know it and they get it immediately. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to download the app. I mean, that has been fantastic. And seeing their eyes light up because they don't expect someone that isn't from their culture to know that something intimate about their life or some behavior that they have, which is exactly why I am so adamant that we will succeed because we're building specifically for these communities. Yeah, I'm very, very proud of the team.
So it's great to chat to you today. We have to move to a quick fire questions now.
Yes, let's do it.
So first one, who are 3 British Asians you'd love to shout out that you think people listening right now should be paying attention to?
Right. So the first would be Asma Khan, who is the founder of the Darjeeling Express restaurant, who I believe has the only all-female kitchen in London. If not, I don't want to say the world, but definitely in London. And she's just so inspirational. If you ever have a chance to go to one of her biryani supper clubs, it is worth it. She is phenomenal. And I think she understands migration and diaspora and exile on a very deep, deep level. And she's very inspiring to me. The second would be Farah Kabir, who is the founder of Hanks, which is a sexual wellness company founded by 2 women. It's very taboo and groundbreaking. And she's like a Muslim woman building a sexual wellness company. And she's just an absolute force. And every day I'm just like, I wish I had all the money in the world to invest into your business. And last but not least, I'll give a shout out to my friend Sadiq Dorset, who is the founder of Muslim Census. And he is now working at Wahid Invest as a product manager. But he is someone that I think very much is using technology in very interesting ways, is very much giving voice to communities that don't always get a voice. And I just love tenacity in people, and all three of these people inspire me every day. There's so many people, really, but I'm only given three, so.
Yeah, others would be here all day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So next question is, if people love your story, love what Blue Money is doing, where should they go to? Where should they follow you, connect with you?
Please get in touch. You can reach me by email at nina@bluemoney.co.co, or you can find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter/X, on Instagram, pretty much anywhere. If you email me, I'm pretty quick to respond. Please don't get in touch about recruiting services or marketing agency services.
Developers.
Or developers. Yeah. No, thank you. But if you're interested in learning more about what we're doing, if you want to be part of our journey, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you.
And then is there anything that maybe somebody listening right now would be able to help you with that Blue Money needs or you need?
Yeah, download the app. We're available in both app stores.
And leave a 5-star review.
Leave a 5-star review. Oh my gosh, I feel like a content creator. I'm like and subscribe. No, please leave a review. Actually, no, I'll give you this one. We are looking for people to tell us their money stories. We have a series that we're launching called Diaspora Talks, and we want people to come and sit with their parents and talk about money, which is a big ask, I know, because we're Asian. But we've had a lot of my friends have stepped into the plate and brought in their parents, and it's really cute, actually. Sadiq was one. He came in with his mom. It was super, super cute. And it's just very interesting to see oftentimes immigrant parents and their immigrant children having this really interesting dialogue about money, about their money mindset, the psychology of all of it. And especially my favorite is just how brutal and savage parents can be. When I ask the question, how do you feel about your children's spending habits? Oh, they just go off. It's brilliant. But if you're interested, please get in touch. We'd love to have you in with your family members to discuss it.
So thank you so much again for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Any final words to the audience?
Migration is the only way we survive. And so that's what we're here to do, is make it easier, make it possible for everyone to have the future that they want.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us. And we don't think you realise how important you are. Because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes a world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission. And you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.